So, what do people really need to get their ideas off the ground? This is the kind of stuff behind Project Australia, what we're thinking about. Whether people need to be connected, whether or not they need to know what's been done before, whether they need a place to write it down, that kind of thing. And so today, I was on the bus, and I actually developed, in the space of 5 minutes, my theory on why the world's in a lot of trouble. And it goes a little bit like this. I can draw on this here.
Yes.
This one here.
You draw on there, then we can hand it out.
Okay. So, the way I see things, just putting it on a graph, is if we call this axis support, right, and that's sort of the top there, and this is your zero baseline. And then I draw in a little funky graph like this and put in, let's put that down the bottom there, and imagine that's baseline and there's just a few dashes there and then we go up like this. Imagine what we're talking about here is like ideas on a continuum where they get put into action. The way I see the world's problems is that there's a whole lot of ideas out there that don't get taken up, and we get a whole lot of stale ideas continually regurgitated through the system. And we try to address problems with the same sorts of thinking again and again and again. And occasionally we get a little bit of brilliance that's outside of it, that pushes us in to new areas, but essentially it's the same sort of thinking across all areas, politics, technology, all sorts of things. And the way I represent this is, there's plenty of space out there, I think, in terms of support for ideas. There's forums, there's places you can put your information, your thoughts out there, blogs, etc. But then in Australia, what happens after you've put an idea out there is that there's a massive drop-off, and you fall into this sort of sieve, and I might probably bring it down to somewhere like this, where most of the ideas just fall through. You know, that good idea you had at night, bang, it's gone the next day kind of thing. A couple of ideas get a bit of traction and maybe they sort of start to launch off a little bit, but essentially there's these gaps. At this phase though, and I call this phase the kind of one where you've been launched a little bit, so you might be incorporated, you might have had a launch event of some sort, you know, you might have got a group of people together, you've actually done something in your idea and it's launched a bit. Then you start to hit into support, because people want to know about you. They're like, oh, you're formal, you've got letterhead, you've got a nice little logo, or yeah, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. So the more support, the more incorporated your idea becomes, the more down the track, the more support you've got. And you may know this, right? So if you've got a spangly, scaled up, massive idea, then of course you're going to have the corporate sniffing around, the investors, everyone wants a big idea. But when you come back here, there's this gap. And so this is what we've identified in the last few years at Project Australia. We're a not-for-profit organisation that is we're developing an incubator for social innovation. And we've recognised there's this gap there in services, and you get all this stale thinking that keeps coming back on itself, and not enough of the broad ideas that the broad population have coming through. So what I very quickly wanted to do was just show you what we're trying to do to address that gap. So that infrastructure gap I was talking about, in terms of, it's very bureaucratic to get an idea off the ground. You've got to have DGR status sometimes, or you've got to have an office space, or these sorts of things. And that lack of support that's really missing there in Australia. What we do is we've got a thing called 5 by 5 or 5 to the 5. And we think that getting through this impasse is as simple as doing 5 things. Low bureaucracy. You need 5 minutes to write up your profile on a website and blog something, write up an idea. That's all it takes these days. And really that's a pretty amazing step in terms of communications, that it only takes 5 minutes to get your idea out there into a new sphere. And it's a global sphere. Then we think you need 5 people. You might not want to lead your idea. You might just be the person who churns out ideas all the time. But someone needs to lead an idea, and you need about 5 people we've found to get an idea up and running. You then, in our books, need to answer 5 questions. Is it not for profit? That's a customised question for us. Is there some research, or have you got some feedback about your idea to show that there's a community need that you're going to address? How is the idea going to be financially sustainable? What governance model are you going to use to manage the operations and the people involved and who you partner with and those sorts of things? And then what's the event that's going to launch it? At this phase? You know, is it writing up a document? Is it meeting? Is it having a launch party? Is it launching a website? Is it even just registering a domain? So what's your launch thing? 5 questions. And then Project Australia gives you $500 once you've jumped through those simple hoops. I'm skipping over the process a little bit, and I'll come to it when I go to the website in my last slide. Give you $500. We think you need a little bit of money to get ideas up off the ground, and that might be just enough to hold your first launch event, register your website for a few years, those sorts of things. And then we think you need 5 strong leads. So you may not be the kind of person who knows people across various sectors, and we think there's people out there like ourselves who can help introduce you to the people you need. So that's our 5x5 model. And just finally, this is just an early mock-up of our new site, just to give you a little bit of a flavour of the kind of thing we're talking about. So this is just the aggregating front page. It's pretty heavy on the content at the moment. It's going to be a little more simplified. But essentially here we've got that whole thing, putting up your profile. So that's where you see the new people that have come in, kind of thing. There's your ideas, there's your projects, and then associated with that we have needs. And we've got some interesting ideas about how to connect in with using mobile phones in terms of microfeeds through Twitter to address needs that people need as they come up. But essentially, just to add to that 5x5 model to get you thinking a little bit. So the idea is only 3 or 4 lines of content. It talks about what you might need or a few little things, but it's just a starting point. Then the project, once you've jumped through that hoop and you've got 5 people, and there's a few other little questions you have to answer, like what's your idea title, do you have a website already, those sorts of things. But once you've got 5 people, then you qualify for project space. You become a project. So we're shifting through these phases of innovation here. Once you're a project on our site, that's when you get a whole page to yourself. You get some basic project management tools. It might just be an Excel sheet with task list kind of thing. You get to connect with other people and share documents. You'll have a wiki and a blog on the site. So you get your own little web page within our site. And then that's when, once you're a project, whenever you feel you're ready, you can then apply for this $500 and you've got to tick those boxes, and that's when we'll have a transparent process, but a process nonetheless to see you push out. And what we're trying to do here is connect people in then with those 5 links into some of the other service providers, as well as along the way, making sure that the people in the social innovation space are actually linking in. So with VibeWire, for example, while ideas are becoming projects, while they're shifting from an idea through to a project, we might have one of VibeWire's services, Youthscape, that does some reporting on new projects emerging. You might have some of those people come and report back on the kinds of projects that are coming through, and therein be part of that launch that people are looking to have in terms of their idea getting up off the ground. So working in with partners like that, feeding people as they come out of this process into maybe infrastructure, into an actual hard space, whether it be the VibeWire the VibeWire Enterprise Hub, where you actually get a desk for as long as you need, that kind of thing. Really working in with all the different players as best we can. So that's our model. That's my way to address the world's problems. That's it.